Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our launch event for Circular Economy Week. The event today and the theme of Circular Economy Week is ever increasing circles, to try and tell the world and our policy family how circular economy has ripples and effects that are wider than just around materials management, things like jobs, resilience, etc. So we'll hear a bit about that today. I'm delighted to welcome you. This is the first time we've done this for a couple of years in person, but we've also got an online audience. So do remember that people at the front, when you speak, they need to hear you through this. And thank you also to our sponsor, our headline partner, Visa, for making this week possible. Visa is supporting C Week as part of their purpose in championing the transition to a circular economy by supporting businesses to leverage circular re-commerce business models such as resell, repair, rental, return, refill and redistribution. And you'll be hearing more about them later in the event. I also want to say that we're hosting the event here in Sustainable Ventures Workspace, which is home to over 100 businesses who have sustainable and often circular practices at heart. So please do take some time after the event to have a look around and maybe talk to some of the organisations here. A quick health and safety notice before we start. Toilets. Now, in my notes it just says toilets, but I do know the toilets are out there and to the left and to the right. So whichever way you go, you'll find a toilet. There is no emergency alarm test scheduled for today. So if you do hear an alarm, it will be an intermittent sound and an announcement will be made. Fire marshals from Sustainable Ventures will direct people to exits. Guests with mobility requirements should make themselves known to the fire marshal, who will direct you to the appropriate area for evacuation. Once outside the building, the muster point is Forum Magnum Square, the large square opposite the building. So it's great to have representatives here from a wide range of government, business and civil society. At ReLondon, we work with all of them through programmes of local authority and business support, as well as behaviour change and a London-wide communications campaign. But policy is key to driving forward circular economy, which aims to tackle those 45% of global emissions that are hard to abate and that are related to production and consumption of stuff. So we'll be discussing how we do that in more detail today. We'll start with global, macroeconomic perspective, and then through national, regional, and city perspectives, and on to local, community, and neighbourhood level activity. It is a packed agenda, so we won't be taking questions from the audience, either online or in the room. But those in the room today, please do stick around and talk to our speakers and panellists afterwards. In our networking space outside. And those online, if you have questions, put it in the chat, say who is it for, and our ReLondon team will follow up with you next week. So, first of all, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, Anne Pettifor. Anne is a political economist and fellow of the Academy of Social Sciences, best known for predicting the global financial crisis of 2007 to 2009 with her book, The Coming First World Debt Crisis, and her 2018 book, The Case for a Green New Deal. In 2018, she was one of the co-writers of the original Green New Deal. So, welcome, Anne.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's quite sentimental for me to be here. I used to work here in County Hall for a minute. Seeing the doors on the toilets repurposed from the old County Hall doors in this modern blocks gave me a moment of nostalgia. But it's really great to see you because I think you all play a heroic role in trying to build the circular economy and lower emissions, and I really salute you for the work that you do. I want to take this very big picture perspective because I've become convinced that actually for us to address these issues, we do have to look at the global economy. And I want to begin by arguing that the problem isn't that consumers as individuals or households or even as firms, are consuming too much. The real problem in the world is that we're producing too much. Far too much even for consumers to be able to consume. And that's one of the reasons why we have global gluts and surpluses. And I want to explain how that works. And I have very little time in which to do this. So I'm just going to give you some key concepts. First of all, the global economy has been reoriented to serve the interests primarily of wealth, of those with wealth. And we see it every day. We see the extraordinary, obscene levels of wealth that are out there, while there's also deep, profound inequality. And we see that at home, real incomes have been falling. And there's a reason for this. It's not entirely accidentally. It's partly because of the deregulation of the financial system. We don't manage the creation of credit anymore in the way that we used to do. Anyone can borrow any kind of money for any purpose, including speculation, gambling, and so on. In the old days, that used to be illegal. And as a result, there's an awful lot of this credit around, and it has to find a way of investing. Now, while that was happening on the one hand, on the other hand, we were reorienting economies towards exports. And whereas before in the past, some countries exported, others did a lot of importing and production at home, now all countries are persuaded that it's really important to orient your economy and the most important aspects of your economy towards exports. And exports get favoured treatment in a way that domestic production doesn't on the whole. If I'm someone selling weapons to the Nigerian government, I get a special subsidy from the Export Credit Guarantee Department. If I'm someone growing tomatoes at home, the government does very little to subsidise my activity. So we're all persuaded towards this. And the result of that is that we have, if you like, overproduction, because we're all exporting, we're building up surpluses and gluts. Now, the problem with that is that in a world of inequality, the 1% are the ones that have the bulk of wealth, but they don't consume. There's only so many mansions they can build, so many fancy cars they can buy, so many super yachts they can buy. There's only so many rockets that Elon Musk can blow up, essentially. So what happens is that they build up these surpluses of wealth, and they're not consuming. At the same time, wages at home are falling. So in relative terms, what is actually happening, in aggregate terms actually, is that, it's not a question of we are buying too much, we're consuming too much. It's that we can't afford to consume that which is produced. And you see it on the high street every day. You see it every time you go into Boots and they say you can have 3 bottles of shampoo for 2, or you go into pound shops, or you go wherever there's massive, or if you go into charity shops. Now, I have 2 charity shops in the little town that I live in, and both of them are rejecting our donations. The community is complaining because they can't absorb all the stuff that we've got, and it particularly applies, of course, to fashion and clothing. Now, the problem with that is that this has happened because, if you like, we've financialized the global economy. And that means we've also financialized commodities and the pricing of commodities. Now, most commodities are not priced at home. They're not priced here. They're priced in global markets, the most important ones. The most important ones are energy, oil, gas. The market for that is a global market, and the price for it is set at global levels. And the others is grain, food, and the prices for that, and they're fixed at something called the Chicago Mercantile Exchange or the Wall Street Mercantile Exchange, and so on. So that's where they're fixed. And the problem with that is that if you have a commodity that is scarce, there's demand and supply for that commodity, in the old-fashioned economics of demand and supply. You're producing that much oil. I need oil. My name is Shell. I'm a company, and I go to the Saudi Arabians and I buy oil from them. These are called wet barrels of oil, right? This is the trade of supply and demand. But there's a different barrel of oil, and that's called a paper barrel of oil, in which what I'm doing is speculating on whether the price of oil is going to go up by 1 cent, half a cent, 10 cents, or down by half a cent, 10 cents, and so on. And that section of the market, the paper barrels of oil, is much bigger. There's much more money aimed at it than there is at wet barrels of oil. Now, it's difficult to understand, but I'd like to give you a quote from Senator Manchin of the United States Senate. As many of you will know, he more or less jinxed President Biden's climate legislation. And he argued that how do we bring down the price of gasoline, he argued. You can't do it, he said, unless you produce more. If there's people that don't want to produce more fossil, he said, then you've got a problem. That's just reality. You've got to do it. In other words, in order to bring down the price of oil, they argue, you have to produce more. You have to extract more oil. Now, that's a very crude supply and demand argument. What it ignores is that the price isn't brought down by the supply and demand. It's brought down by whether speculators believe it's going down or whether it should go up. So what is this of relevance to you in your work and on circularity? The point is this. What we're doing is we tend to aim our arguments and our work at consumers. We blame consumers for the fact that they're shopping too much, they're buying too much, and of course they're disposing of it too quickly. When in fact what is happening is we are producing too much. There's overproduction in the global economy. And if we're going to change that, we have to change the global economy in the way in which the system works. So I want to just put that down on the table because it matters to us here on the ground. Here on the ground, we're suffering something called the cost of living crisis and inflation. And I am arguing that an awful lot of inflation is due to the financialization of commodity prices. Those prices went through the roof, not because there was a shortage of oil, not because Russia had invaded Ukraine. For a moment, there was a blip in prices when Russia invaded Ukraine, but there was never a shortage of oil. It turned out the Americans had massive reserves and were able to distill those downwards. Turned out that you could get grain from elsewhere, and pretty soon supply and demand were matched. But the price still remained high, and it's still inflicting us here on the ground in the cost of living crisis. And until we understand that, it's going to be really hard to manage the economy and to manage production. Now, one of the things, and I wanted to just give you an example of what that means in real terms. As a member of the Scottish Government's Just Transition Commission, we paid a visit as a commission to the island of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides. And there they have wonderful wind farms, of course, because it is terribly windy and cold out there. And there's a community wind farm and an extraordinary effort by the local community to build a wind farm, to bring in the turbine, to build roads that would actually bear the weight of the turbine, to erect the damn thing, to raise the finance for it was all extraordinary. And when we were there, they told us that actually, of course, at that point, the price of oil had peaked, got really high, that they were becoming extraordinarily profitable. They were making a huge amount of money out of the global oil price. Then we had a meeting downtown with the townspeople, and we asked them what they thought, and they hated the turbines with a vehemence that was really quite shocking. Why? They've got these great big ugly turbines, they argued, at the bottom of their gardens, but they were paying the global price for oil. They weren't getting cheap energy from their local turbine. Because the community turbine was a charity, effectively, and they couldn't give money to individuals, they can give money to societies and to build it. So that what that shows you is that no matter how much the local community would have wanted to manage that resource that was on their doorstep, they were still subject to a global price. And until we change those markets, we're not going to be able to change the way in which people consume energy. So I wanted to, I don't know how am I doing, Sharon, for time? I hope I'm not going on for too long. I just wanted to show you that in my book, I argued that every building should become a power station. And the reason I argue that is that I'm arguing at a macro level that we should be bringing economies back on shore. We've offshored our economy. In fact, more of the major decisions about our economy are made by others abroad, not by us here. The exchange rate, the rate of interest, the price of commodities, and so on. These are all determined by global markets, not by domestic institutions, central banks, governments, and so on, or businesses. So one of the things we need to do is to localize the economy. And for it to become a steady state economy, which is the ambition of my book, therefore we must have it much more localized. And one of the points I made was that every building should become a power station. It should have its own energy instead of having global energy, if you like, piped into houses or communities, and instead of having huge, great grids, instead of having great, big, enormous nuclear power companies and other kinds of power companies, we ought to localize energy. And this was picked up by a couple in London. They talk about disrupting the monopolistic lockout of local and the grip of predatory globalization, and the need and the problem also with many UK renewables cowboys. And they want to empower communities, households, schools across the UK. And of course, they're led by this couple, Dan Edelstein and his wife, Hilary, and they're in Lynmouth Road, Walthamstow. And what they've done is they've decided that all the houses in their street should become power stations, right? And they are quite naughty because they're artists and very clever. He's a filmmaker. And the font that they use for the power station is the same as used for polling stations. So it gives people the sense of something important and powerful. And it's quite remarkable what has happened. If you walk up and down Lynmouth Street, you have people proudly announcing that they have applied for solar panels and so on. They're becoming power stations. So what we see is this is happening. This is an effort by a community to onshore a really crucial commodity, which is their energy supplies. This has happened throughout. And as Barry James of Green Street says, we're going to hit a Kodak moment with the digitalization of energy, where households buy their kit, and from that point onwards, their energy is free. That's going to happen in a way, and it's going to have the kind of impact on businesses and also on the economy that digital photography had on Kodak. So what this is arguing is that we've got to see this global picture within which you're making arguments about the circular economy. That actually what we have to start looking at is the sources of production, not necessarily blame. And I think this is terribly important for the Green movement. The Green movement is fond of blaming individuals, households, if you like, for emissions, when reality is that they're not to blame. And part of the resentment that people feel towards the Green movement is this feeling that they are being blamed when actually it's really beyond their power. And I want us, therefore, to focus on the real bad guys, if you like, the source of excess of production, and actually, which is also rooted in a system of inequality, so that we can actually begin to address the root causes of the problem and then do the good work that you're doing to circulate and reuse all of the materials and resources available. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. And I think that was really interesting because, you know, we in this room we're really interested in changing the economic system to become a more circular system, to be more resilient, to be more local. So quite a lot of, you know, what you were saying there really chimes with what we're doing in this room. So thank you for those insights. Now, I want to take it from that very macro level to the city level. And it's my honour to introduce Shirley Rodrigues to the stage, talk about London's environment strategy and the role that circular economy plays, not just in that strategy, but across other areas too. Shirley Rodrigues is the Deputy Mayor for Energy and Environment. Shirley.
Hi, and thanks, Wayne, for giving me an opportunity to speak to you all today. And I'm really delighted to be here at the Sustainable Ventures in London and to be part of this really important event at the 6th annual Circular Economy Week, which is absolutely brilliant to see. I think we've been here since Sadiq was elected in 2016, essentially. So great to see how this has evolved, and really glad to see people in the room again. I'd also like to thank ReLondon and Visa for hosting this year's event and lining up what an exceptional panel of experts you're going to be hearing from this afternoon, and really grateful also for the thoughts that have just been shared by Pettifor today, one of our most brilliant economists, who's really led the way, recognising that the great economic opportunity of the century is through the Green New Deal, and really advocating powerfully for how a circular economy, a genuine circular economy, can help in that. And I know you're going to be hearing later from Lord Callanan, who I'm sure will be recognising the important role of the circular economy at a national level. And I'm hoping he's going to be talking about how the government can support at a local level, at city level and even below that, how we could be supported even more. And this is because we believe cities have an absolutely crucial role in playing to make that circular economy a reality. And the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, wants to make it easier for manufacturers, recyclers, innovators and the public to help deliver on that. The Mayor made the transition to a circular economy a very specific goal within his environment strategy when we published it in 2018, recognising its critical role in delivering his environmental agenda. And facilitating the city's transition to a circular economy is going to help reduce those consumption-based emissions and help influence that global supply chain, hopefully to produce less and to be more circular and use resources more efficiently. You'll have seen many of the reports that are coming out about how we're at a critical resource limits already, if not surpassing them. So we really have to be looking after the resources we have in this world. The Mayor has set a net zero carbon target and has brought that forward to try and reach it by 2030. And again, you know, how we use our resources, how we circularise is going to be absolutely critical to that. And whilst London performs quite well in comparison to the elsewhere in the UK, we do have hotspots of emissions. So food, for example, accounts for 8% of our consumption-based emissions. Goods and services, a further 16%. So that's about a quarter of our London's total carbon footprint. So we can't get to that net zero target without tackling our consumption-based emissions. And what we produce locally represents a footprint of around 3 tonnes of carbon dioxide per person. So appreciate Anne's comments too. We don't think it's just a personal priority or a responsibility for people to reduce their carbon emissions. We also believe it's a systemic issue. But we all have to play our part, because without everybody participating in tackling climate emissions, moving to that circular economy, we are not going to make those very targets. And you'll have seen that in London, for example, we're already seeing the impacts of climate change here in London. It's not global issues. We've seen flash flooding, surface water flooding. We've seen extreme heat events and droughts. So, you know, we were near enough a drought, I think, a couple of years ago, a couple of winters ago. So these are very here and now, and whilst they may not be as extreme as some of the events that you're seeing all around the world, we do fear that, you know, these are coming here. So what we do, both in adapting to the impacts of climate change, but also reducing the emissions, including our consumption-based emissions, is absolutely critical. The good news is in the last couple of decades, we've seen consumption-based emissions in London fall by about 43%, but obviously still that's far too high. And against our action to try and further reduce that, you know, as Anne's mentioned, you know, we are in the middle of a cost of living crisis. It hasn't gone away. It may feel a little duller, or people are more used to, you know, just trying to struggle through it. But it is very real, and people are struggling. So what can we do through our circular economy principles and practices to help with that as well? So one of the things that we've been trying to do is embed that circular economy approach through all of the Mayor's strategies. One is, for example, our London plan is the strategy that sets the policy for development in the city. And through that, we've asked new developers through a pioneering policy to submit circular economy statements, setting out how they're going to think about incorporating that circular economy thinking into the construction and operation of proposed developments. And that is right from the beginning, when they start to think about the designs. They have to demonstrate how they're using at least 20% recycled or reused content. And we've issued guidance last March, and we've already had around 120 circular economy statements from developments that refer to the mayor. So these are the very big strategic developments. So these are the ones that, we had a lot of discussion about, can they do it, should we do it? But, we're very pleased to see developers actually saying they wanted to do this, they wanted to see guidance, and they obviously want to be in a position to help shape that guidance as it goes forward. But it's brilliant to see that forward thinking, being embedded into business models. But of course, we need regulatory certainty, and you'll have heard the mayor and many others talking about this in terms of the sort of flip-flopping that we've seen from government on some of the net zero policies that we have, and the need for that long, loud signal in order for businesses to invest and for people to understand what they need to do in order for us to accelerate our action. And obviously this is a national government level. Whilst we can set policy certainty, and we have been doing through some of our strategies like the London Plan for Developers, we can't do it for the whole economy, and that's where government comes in. The mayor has been lobbying, for example, central government to implement reforms on the extended producer responsibility and deposit return from as long ago as 2018. It's far too overdue. And we think those reforms are essential in making sure that producers take greater responsibility for the packaging they put in the market, increasing recycling and stimulating innovations in packaging towards more circular products. So it's really disappointing that these reforms have been delayed and no date set for when we're going to see that stop-start approach stop. It is inhibiting innovation, but it's also costing local authorities because of that delay. And we know that local authorities, London Council have just published a report about how much they are on the edge of a survival, I think, essentially, because of their financial situation. But in the meantime, London carries on, and we are not waiting for the rest to catch up. We've been doing a lot of other work, programmes through organisations like ReLondon, which is a partnership between the Mayor and the London local authorities, the waste authorities. And we're really proud to help, for example, support circular economy SMEs. ReLondon is helping us deliver a range of programmes, which you're going to be hearing about today and through the rest of the week. The Mayor's Green New Deal Fund, through that, he invested £10 million in programmes that is helping and has helped support around 1,000 green jobs, creating new employment opportunities from repair and recycling to digital platforms facilitating resource sharing. We've been helping to support ReLondon's really brilliant business transformation programme for sector SMEs. That's helped 54 businesses access about £600,000 worth of grants and advice, safeguarding, again, about 600 green jobs. And that programme, which was launched in 2017, has helped support more than 400 businesses to establish really new circular economy business models. And one of them, I'm sure you'll have heard of, is the Earthshot prize winner, Cllr, which is absolutely brilliant. And it's also allowed the environmental performance of various products to be assessed. So Cllr's OHO product, which is a sort of essentially an edible bubble made from seaweed, and that aims to reduce single-use packaging and help to introduce them to investors and potential buyers. And that now is being rolled out across the world, which is exactly the sort of model we want to see. Homegrown businesses in London, supported by organisations like the Mayor of London and ReLondon, in order to grow and create jobs. Our Better Futures programme, for example, is helping clean tech businesses grow their circular economy models, products like Colliebox, which offers a reusable food and drink packaging, Blast Studio, which collects cardboard waste and other discarded materials to produce a biomaterial that's then used for furniture and architectural pieces. We're really grateful that this funding, this programme has been the recipient of £2.3 million worth of funding from the government's UK Shared Prosperity Fund. And that's exactly the support that we're looking for government to provide to local organisations. We've been working with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and ReLondon to pioneer circular food systems like Food Connect. So this is helping redistribute tons of food that would have been wasted in supermarkets into food banks, but also saving greenhouse gas emissions at the same time. In terms of some of our other projects, we've been created a whole network of single-use fountains working with Thames Water, 130 of those drinking fountains around the city, and they've already helped avoid over 5 million half-litre plastic bottles. So this is where people can see something very visible in the city, reminding them of how they can help reduce packaging as well. And all of this is around jobs and economy. As I've said, we have our adult education budget, which is helping develop skills academies to encourage people to really grow in those new green jobs that we want people to move to. We know that Londoners and London's economy can grow and thrive, not at the expense of our environment or our communities, but in harmony with them. And London is ready for that change, and we want everybody in this room and outside of it, all stakeholders, to join us on that journey. So thank you once again for the huge opportunity to be here today to tell you a little bit about what we're doing in London, working with many of you as partners. I hope you enjoyed the rest of today's event and the rest of the week. And I'm really confident that we're going to see some really great things coming out of this. I'm sorry I can't stay for the rest of the afternoon, but I'm going to be watching from a virtual position whilst I also attend another meeting. But thank you all very much and good luck.
Thank you, Shirley. I mean, that really does kind of set the scene for how cities and regions are the engine room of the circular economy. And it's great to hear the role that London is playing and its commitment to accelerating the circular economy transition here in this city. So, I would like to invite my panel up, which I'm going to moderate. So if you'll hear a bit more of me today, but then there will be a break. You'll be pleased to hear. I mean, from me, that is. So first of all, I'd like to ask my panel to get on stage, and we're going to talk about a view from UK cities and regions. Right. So I'm going to ask you very briefly, if you wouldn't mind, in less than a minute, to introduce yourself. We've got 30 minutes for this panel, so we've got very quick. We haven't got much time. Introduce yourself, and then we'll dive right into some questions. Catherine.
Thanks, Wayne. I'm Catherine Barber. I'm the Environment Director for the Greater London Authority. So I'm the senior official who supports the Mayor of London and Shirley Rodrigues in doing difficult things like getting London to net zero by 2030 and trying to achieve a zero waste city.
Good afternoon, and first of all, thanks very much, Wayne, and to your entire team and previous speakers for getting this show on the road today. It's great to be here in person. I'm Alison McRae. I'm Senior Director at Glasgow Chamber of Commerce. We're a voluntary organisation and part of British Chambers of Commerce. I look after our strategic partnerships. We have a formal partnership with our local authority, Glasgow City Council, and we think we're the only chamber in the United Kingdom to have that. I say that because many of you are here as local authorities. Secondly, we do a lot of work in youth employability and education and industry links. And thirdly, obviously, the work we're doing in circular economy, which we've done with many partners over the last 8 years.
Got my own. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rob Robinson. I'm a Sustainable Business Programme Manager at Kent County Council. But as of next month, I will be also the Circular Economy Manager. So it's a transition that's very much linked to a circular economy transition, exactly. So it's very much linked to the whole theme of today.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Glynn Stevenson. I'm the Policy and Partnerships Officer at Merseyside Recycling and Wasting Authority. So thank you very much for inviting me down today to London. So we're the Waste Disposal Authority for the Liverpool City region area, and that includes the City of Liverpool, but also 5 other districts. So it's quite a wide area. In our team, the team I work in, the strategy and development team, we work in strategy, policy, communications, community fund, community engagement, education, sustainability. We could go on. So it's quite a wide ranging area. That's why we have a number of interfaces with the circular economy.
So we're going to do this in real life, which is going to be challenging because we're probably a bit out of practice. So I'm just going to ask questions to the panel. So, just dive in if you want to answer. But my first question really is trying to set the scene of why is your city or region pursuing a circular economy strategy? And also, if you could answer that, what's in it for you besides waste management?
I've been given the microphone. So I would say for Greater London, by international standards, perhaps by UK standards as well, we are a wealthy and economically sophisticated city. Of course there's poverty, of course there's deprivation, but the mayor's view is if we can't do this, then how can we ask other people to do it? And he's very focused on the climate emergency. You heard Shirley talk about how that's already affecting London. But when we think about our own production of carbon emissions, it's only about 3 tonnes per person, which sounds great, but it's 8 tonnes per person when you think about our consumption emissions. So we really have to think about what we're buying, how we're using it. And I think we just feel that it's more efficient for businesses to be using materials efficiently. And we saw during COVID and with some of the trade shocks that we've had recently in the UK about the risks of supply chain disruption as well. So this is about making London more resilient, both to the climate, but also economically.
I can go next, though. So in the Liverpool City region, we also obviously, as other areas will have as well, we've got a climate emergency. We've declared a net zero target for 2040 for the wider city region. In our role in the Waste Authority, we think we can't make that target if we don't take a zero waste approach, or at least a zero avoidable waste approach. So city region climate target is important to us. We think zero waste is the way forward for us. But when we say zero waste, we're talking a really wide scope. So we've got themes of planet, people, and economy. There's a lot of benefits in there, as you can imagine. People-wise, there's a lot of social value. There's a lot of jobs, innovation potential in the green economy. So there's really a wide range of different interfaces on policy that we can get into just by going down that approach. And we incorporate action on circular economy in our wider zero waste strategy. So that's where we're coming from.
I suppose our perspective initially was about how do we move towards sustainable economic growth, and our kind of starting point was really from an innovation point of view, because we understood how important the climate transition was going to be. But innovation and future-proofing businesses was absolutely at the heartbeat of the starting position that we had in Glasgow. And jobs and skills, as you would expect, is absolutely critical part of that. And I suppose that's the kind of weight that we bring into the equation. But I think it's probably worth seeing that part of the way along the journey of our last 8 years, the work that Josh and Sarah and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation have been doing on articulating actually the global impact of climate and the 55% on renewables, that the circular economy has got such a massive important role to play in tackling that other 45%. So that's given us more clout to reinforce the point of innovation. And I say that about all the unexpected collaborations that we're likely to see, particularly through SMEs as they come together to provide solutions that we need to see. But innovation was our initial driver.
I think just building on your point there, the angle that certainly our team have approached this from is we've been delivering a number of EU programs when we were part of the EU, about 8 of them at the same time, and a lot of the themes overlap. And I think when we're talking about energy and low emission strategy and we're talking about clean growth, a lot of the same conversations that you have and a lot of the same conclusions that are drawn, literally for a small business, a large business, a local authority, is all about it makes good business sense. So the cost of doing business has gone up exponentially over the last however many months. And it's only when energy prices hit a certain peak do people go, oh, actually, I maybe should think about my energy. But actually uncovering other needs of businesses and of different networks across all of our different regions, I think that the commonality is basically when you actually start to look at the business sense or the reasons for doing a change, there's many of them. So when we're looking about uncovering policies and everything else, there's a stronger and stronger justification. It just makes good business sense for us to enter into the circular economy discussions alongside, other coexisting policies.
I mean, it's interesting. In this panel, we've got a really good spread of public authorities. We've got the regional authority, a county council, a chamber of commerce, and not public authority, but chamber of commerce representing business, and a waste disposal authority. So I'm kind of interested in what do you think your role is in helping to transition or accelerate the transition to a circular economy, so that the people in the audience or people who are watching can get a kind of, oh, we could do that?
I'll start. I've thought quite closely about that, and the political answer is always it depends, because it depends where you are. It depends who's part of it. So we've got 12 boroughs and districts and a unitary within our sort of area. We run something called the Kent Resource Partnership, which is very similar basically to what ReLondon is with all of the the 33 London boroughs. I'm from Bexley, so I hit one of them. But yeah, so we're a bit of a convener, a bit of a cajoler, but certainly in some areas, we can't tell areas what to do, boroughs and districts specifically, but we can share. You okay? We can share best practice. We can champion good calls. We can champion good practice businesses. We can do a certain amount of behavioural support as well. And I think there's a lot of the same challenges that everyone within the room is going to have. A lot of it is about how to actually reach the right markets, get the right message out there, and actually engender some sort of change. So doing something is better than doing nothing.
I mean, I would say from the Chamber's point of view, more often than not, it's about convening, actually, just very simple convening, but obviously simple convening is never what it seems when you're actually doing the convening, but actually bringing people together, cross-sectoral organisations, and sharing that good practice. So a lot of what we've done is about network development. So we've got a Circular Glasgow network, which has got 350 members now. But what we've also been able to do as a role, which is important as a city actor, is that we're really agile. So that helps because we're able to respond very quickly. So many of you in the room may know that Glasgow, alongside Manchester and Birmingham, are now innovation accelerators. So as a chamber, we are very much in the heartbeat of that. And now because we've come into the room with circular economy and innovation as our kind of core driver, we're working across the innovation districts. We worked with Waterbear to take a film out to show what opportunities there were in innovation for businesses from a circular economy perspective. So we showed the Scottish Leather Group, Dear Green Coffee and Quantech as three very different examples of innovation in practice. But we did that in partnership with the Glasgow City and Innovation District. So we will continue to look at that almost to some extent as our neighbourhood community development work, because it's core to the city's economy. So we respond and adapt as we've gone along in alignment with how the city is progressing its overall economy.
Well, speaking for London, we have some interesting powers, I think unique as a mayoral authority. One of those is over strategic planning policy. So the Mayor of London writes a plan and then gives guidance to developers on how they can come up with big new developments for the built environment. And our Deputy Mayor, Shirley Rodrigues, explained how in the last London plan and the guidance that went with that, we've required circular economy statements from developers to show how they're using recycled material or reused material in the new developments. That now has to be 1/5 of all the material that is used, which is really just forcing people to think differently and to think creatively about the materials they're using. We also have some influence over boroughs. The mayor has the ability to call in the reduction and recycling plans that the local authorities produce in London. So they submit those to us, we review them and give comments. And we were really pleased this year to see there were more examples of circular economy initiatives being put into those, not just recycling and sort of waste collection promises, but really thinking more creatively. And then we are also, like the others, involved in various partnerships. We joined the Ellen MacArthur Foundation network as a member 8 years ago. We have the Mayor's flagship food initiative, which leads to lots of redistribution of surplus food. So that's also contributing in the cost of living crisis. So we do everything from the kind of strategic planning and policy through to influencing others and to convening as well.
As a waste disposal authority, As a waste disposal authority, we're only one part of the jigsaw. We want to do our bit. We want other people to do their bit in the city region. I think an important thing for us is raising awareness. There's some things we can do, some things we can't do. We can always raise awareness and encourage and champion the circular economy. So we're keen to do that. One of the things we did was set up the Liverpool City Region Circular Economy Club. That's 120 members now, so there's quarterly meetings and different topics. So that's been a success, and we were grateful for Wayne actually to come to the launch event.
I remember, yes.
5 years ago,
Yeah.
and it's still going. So thanks for turning up.
You're welcome.
So that's something an authority can do. It's convening and making that space available. Something we're quite proud of. We've also, going back into waste authorities, we've developed with other organisations in the city region, we've developed a strategic waste management partnership, which is leading on our development of zero waste strategy. So that's sort of our business is waste, but we're following that zero waste trajectory that I've mentioned before. And we've also got the authority's also got a very successful community fund, and we might tell you a bit more about that later on in the discussion, but that's another way of reaching out into community. So there's a community level, there's a local authority level, and there's whatever support we can do for businesses too.
All of the panellists to think of a success story that they can share. But before I do, I think it might be worth just thinking about, are there any particular roadblocks or challenges that you've faced? And what do you need in terms of infrastructure policy or investment or resident engagement to overcome those challenges? And then I'll ask you about a particular success story, and then we'll move on from there. So I don't know, maybe Catherine.
Sure. Well, Shirley Rodrigues already mentioned a couple of things that we would like to see from central government, which was about extended producer responsibility and the deposit return scheme, which I believe were manifesto commitments, have been consulted on, the plans have been out there, but they've just not been implemented yet, and we'd really like to see that brought in soon. I think there's also something about giving citizens information so they can make informed choices, and understanding the impact of their consumption choices and what options they have. And you know, most of us here are probably reasonably well informed about environmental issues, but every time I come to an event like this, I learn about some new opportunity. Last week, I think ReLondon introduced me to the Library of Things, which is where you can go and borrow things like paint strippers for getting paint off your wall for £5 a day, rather than going out and buying the tool itself, and then it's sitting unused on your shelf most of the year round. You can actually just go and borrow those from libraries. I really like that idea, but if I'd never come across that, then surely most Londoners also hadn't. So I instantly told all of my neighbourhood on our WhatsApp chat. So proselytising.
The local Library of Things on my road, because I bought a very long ladder stupidly, and now everybody knows it, so they all borrow it from, which is good. That's how it should be.
Yeah, there must be a stand-up routine in that. I think from a business-specific perspective, I think we would be very keen to see governments prioritising investment into SMEs in particular. I think a lot of the bureaucracy behind some of the application processes is pretty tough. I think many of us in this room will have seen that in the market. That's not to say that people aren't up for a challenge. It's just a case of actually speed and agility in that space is even more important than ever. So actually, how do government unlock funding to enable the innovation that can be done to enable us to get to a circular economy, I think is really important. I think incentivised procurement and incentivised planning. Everybody likes the word regulation. As a chamber, generally speaking, we generally have to have a very balanced view, as our member representation is everything from airports to 100% circular businesses, which is one of the reasons innovation was so exciting for us as our core modus operandum. But yeah, procurement and planning are two of the biggest deal breakers, I think, in terms of transition overall. And also building in networks. I mean, ReLondon are doing great things, EMF's doing great things, we'd like to think we're doing great things, but how do we all do that more and better and scale all of that? Because it's all about storytelling.
From a waste perspective, we've got a lot of waste to deal with as a waste authority. You might not be surprised to hear that. A lot of that is residual waste. That's really the problem. A lot of carbon emissions associated with dealing with that. So really, going back to the policies that we've already mentioned about EPR, DRS, simpler recycling, all those things can contribute to reducing that amount of residual waste. Also getting into the behaviour change side of things as well, and understanding those behaviours and what the motivations are really important. Finance, obviously, and funding is always going to be an issue for local government, particularly at the moment. So I won't go into that any more detail. On infrastructure, I think there's obviously physical infrastructure, but also the soft human infrastructure. So things like we haven't got anything like quite the same as a ReLondon or a circular Glasgow in our city region. So those things, we haven't quite got that focus on a leading organisation, so to speak, on circular economy. I think data is important. We haven't yet got the money together and delivered a circular city scan, which would be really useful as a baseline to make some actions from. Data around behaviours, what changes behaviours, motivations, as I mentioned before, those are all important things. Also understanding what's going on already in businesses too. There is, just because we're a local authority doesn't mean we know half the things that are going on, and there's probably lots going on that we're not even aware of, including at the community level too. And I would say partnerships, part of my job is partnerships, so I'm going to say that, but I think more partnerships and collaborations are critical. No one organisation really is going to own or manage or run the circular economy, so you need people working together. You need people at all different levels working together, including organisations too. So,
Thanks, Glynn. I don't think there's any words left now. No, I think on top of that, I think there's a knowledge issue. I think not both. From a business perspective, from a consumer perspective, and from the people making the decisions as well. So from a policy perspective, so that could be government, it could be from local policy, because I think some of the language that used, and I think generally some of the perception, everyone here is here because they've probably bought into the concept and they understand it. A lot of the general public have probably been polarised, whether they're for or against anything broadly green or against it. And I think some of the rhetoric and some of the language needs to change. It needs to be more, the benefits need to be extolled a lot more rather than the reasons not to do something. Because inherently, unfortunately, humans are generally quite lazy and want to take the easiest way out. So you mentioned things like labelling, consistent recycling, where people have actually got an understanding of what the waste hierarchy is and how they can be part of it. But I think generally having, making sure people can understand the incentive to do something beyond what they ordinarily would do, I think is quite a good start. But from a barrier point of view, that's possibly one of the biggest barriers, basically inertia. If you're doing something, you can carry on doing it. If you haven't started yet, that's the biggest barrier.
Is offering citizens opportunities to do the right thing without them even knowing it. I mean, the Library of Things example is a great example. It's just simply better than being the idiot that bought the ladder. You're borrowing something and you don't have to store it. So I think that there are a plethora of these examples of businesses that are just simply better without even anybody having to think, I'm doing something green. Of course you are, by definition. I'm going to ask you about a success story. And to your point, Alison, our success story, ReLondon's success story, I like to think, although there are many, and my team are in the audience, so if I don't pick your particular success story, it's not that I don't like you. But one of the things I'm particularly proud of at ReLondon is the support that we've offered businesses, and the 400 or so businesses that have been through our doors since 2017. And Notpla were at the launch of our business support program, actually dishing out their product, and Shirley was there introducing it. It was one of the first people probably to have popped one of those seaweed balls, and so was I. So there you go. There's a claim to fame. I'm not sure that's I want that broadcast, but there you go. So if I ask you to kind of identify what you would say is your circular economy success. I hope I haven't stolen your thunder.
You have. But I'm going to say thank you to ReLondon anyway for the business transformation programme that you've run, which the Mayor has supported, because that has supported so many businesses, some of which are now in this building, I believe. I'll mention the Mayor's Refill London campaign, which has been helping people to access water to refill your bottle as you carry it around with you rather than going and buying a new single-use plastic bottle of water. If you're based in London or you spend time here, you've probably seen the blue and white water fountains where you can get those refills. They're in places with high footfall. And I know that during the heat wave last year, I was really grateful for the fact there were a couple on my way to work. I use those every day. And we also have Refill London public points. There are 4,500 of them, which can be in cafes, shops, offices. You can get an app on your phone and just find where the nearest free refill for water point is near you in London. So that's a programme that has been run by my colleague Nina Di Certo, who's in the audience. Thank you, Nina. And so she's keeping Londoners hydrated and cutting back on plastic waste.
5 million bottles, that's astonishing statistic. Yeah.
Okay, one, he says. We'll go for one. Okay, I think I'm going to pick Step Up to Net Zero. So in short, on the back of the UK government's Kickstart scheme, which was done during the pandemic, our team built a programme called Step Up to Net Zero. Similar idea, but looking to target how a business is going to transition to net zero, but ideally with circular economy principles. And we mobilised the first pilot, which concluded at the end of August with 39 businesses and 40 placements. Done all age offer. The businesses were grilled within an inch of their lives at the start of the process to be sure they were culturally ready to take on board the changes that were pulled together in their individualised and tailored action plan. The placements were procured from graduates from our wonderful academic institutions, from the Glasgow School of Art, Glasgow Caledonian University, University of Glasgow, University of Strathclyde, and so on. But it was also involving upskilling and reskilling, which I think is a really important point in terms of transition of skills and experience, but into this space. The appetite was phenomenal. And we had literally 500 applications for 40 roles. And everybody says how tight the labour market is at the moment. So that tells you a whole lot. The independent evaluation was done, and his words, not mine. He said, "Alison, this is unusually positive." Exactly, and the great news is in the back of that we got 4 days working notice that the Glasgow City Council will continue to fund it through shared prosperity funding at their committee. So we're ready to go and start recruiting again with a longer term game of the next 5 years. But to scale that model would be phenomenal because it's been very, very intensively wrapped around support. So each of the placements and the businesses get highly skilled experts in circular economy and net zero generally in sustainability going into the business to handhold, and they've got their own community as well. So they're now part of the Circular Glasgow community, and so on we build. That's one. I'm only giving you one. Oh, no, I keep doing that, sorry.
Let's be brief. I want to come back to Alison just to talk about post-COP, but and we've got a couple of minutes left, so yeah.
Okay, I will do one, maybe 1.5, but I'll do one. Under our low carbon Kent banner, which was sort of, we will approach businesses and they won't run away because they think we're the council. So we delivered 2 projects, one, Upcycle Your Waste, you can Google it. The other, Blueprint to a Circular Economy. Sophie and the guys are, from Brighton are in the audience as well. Essex was the lead partner on that. But what we tried to do is actually have a business offering that was all pulling together different projects. So those 2 projects were all about trying to uncover business cases, test businesses that had some waste or what they viewed as waste, and businesses that could use that waste. So the old swap shop scenario, Noel Edmonds, etc. That was particularly successful, and we linked that, as you've just said, they're on training. We linked that with an idea of trying to make sure businesses are aware of the opportunities of the circular economy as well. And they're 2 things that we're taken forward into our new next generation of business support that we're going to be continuing.
Only 2 people in the audience, including me, understood the swap shop reference. Glynn.
I remember Swap Shop. I'll briefly mention our community fund, which works with schools, faith groups, community organisations, voluntary organisations to deliver food waste skills, prevention, reuse type projects. I'll just say over the last 10 years, we've supported over 130 projects, over 70 organisations, and awarded about £1.5 million worth of grants. Huge amounts of social value in that sort of work. There is some tonnage diversion as well, but there's a huge amount of social value, and you might come into that a bit more maybe in the next panel as well. Last week, to finish off, we did win the LARAC Best Waste Prevention Award. So congratulations to all those groups.
Just to finish off, I think it'd be useful to have hopefully a good news story from COP, which was what, two years ago now? How has your experience of COP and Glasgow's experience of COP had a legacy?
Well, this is a 2-minute slot, I think, now until your lovely colleague sticks her hand up. But what I will say is that we were in a really privileged position in that when we were hosting, the city was hosting COP, because we had at least 4 or 5 years' experience in the circular economy world of climate, and a lot of the businesses were already in the room, stakeholders were in the room, so the city itself was really agile and open to doing really progressive stuff. But as a chamber, we went in with a pretty robust legacy offer to the board at the time, which was on strategy, business engagement, international trade, and educational legacy. And I suppose supporting Team Glasgow and its climate targets of 2030 and 2045 to be a circular city. Now the City Council and Team Glasgow will be going into all future COPs with that as the means of trying to secure and attract investment into the city to realise its Green Deal investment prospectus, which is a substantive series of projects and opportunities the city wants to see as part of its transition and meeting its climate targets. As a chamber, we launched our first iteration of Congress of Business, COB, in May, because we thought, well, there's all these Glasgow climate pacts and there's various sectors represented. COP26 had business most engaged ever of any COP before, and we thought, we're a chamber, we're a bit business, we've got global networks, let's get in the room in this. So we landed our first one, we focused on GFANS and the role of finance internationally and how we would see that, what it meant for business and what it meant for cities, and also food as a case study. So we did have a super circular Glasgow supper the night before we launched COB with Thomasina Myers, who talked about food system changes, which was phenomenal, and again, cross-sectoral representation at that. I have mentioned Step Up to Net Zero, but I will talk about briefly Plate Up for Glasgow, which was delivered during COP, which was specifically targeted at hospitality on the back of businesses who were being engaged by our team and listening during a dreadfully painful time. And Rebecca, our lead on that, basically pulled together Plate Up for Glasgow, working with over 40 restaurateurs and hospitality service businesses to do similar model to what InStock was doing in the days in Amsterdam, which was actually looking at food waste and adding value to it to maximum effect. Behaviour change, key. Then next major global event, UCI Cycling Championships in May this year. The city was still very high in the Global Sustainability Ranking Index at 6 at the time. And she was working with them and Glasgow Life and came up with Grounds for Recycling, which was specifically targeting coffee waste. Now, the process was a bit of a campaign initially, but it's a longer term game of how can you add value to coffee, which you can use to make, wait for it, sunglasses, furniture, athletic clothing. We have a business in Glasgow that's going through a scale model process at the moment. Revive, when you extract the oil from coffee grinds, it has the same qualities as palm oil. Once that's scaled, that could totally transform food industry in the world. So I will stop at that. But we've been doing a lot, and also Jobs of the Future, working with our schools.
Well, I mean, that's fantastic, and I'm so pleased that there was a legacy from COP. Thank you. Thank you to my lovely panel. Thank them in the traditional way. To disembark, I would like to introduce our next speaker. We're going to move to the national stage, and I'm delighted that we have joining us Lord Callanan. the Minister for Energy Efficiency and Green Finance from the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. So if I could ask Lord Callanan to come up to the front, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be here at the ReLondon and thank you for the kind invitation to speak at what is an extremely important event. It does promise to be an exciting exploration of all the great work that is happening to deliver a circular transformation of our economy. So let me say a few words about what the government is doing to support this transition and why the pursuit of circularity is vital to delivering against the 2050 net zero target, and as far as we're concerned, really important towards the security of our energy system and those supply chains. Objectives which are at the core of the work that I do at the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero as the Minister for Energy Efficiency and Green Finance. Now, in the department's industrial decarbonisation strategy, we set out a pathway for meeting net zero, where resource efficiency and material substitution measures could potentially save up to 9 million tonnes of CO2 emissions per annum in industry by 2050. Much of these savings could be delivered in the next 10 years, contributing up to 25% of industry's emission savings in Carbon Budget 5, and supporting our target to cut final energy demand by 15% by 2030 compared to 2019 levels. And we won't meet our national net zero targets without a shift to a low-carbon circular economy. By keeping materials and products in use for longer at their highest value, and by deploying emerging technology to decarbonise production, we stand to improve the resilience of UK supply chains and to build upon what is a competitive advantage in the future global economy. And it really is wonderful to see so many innovative new businesses that are already growing to grasp these future fantastic opportunities, from small repair shops through to design studios to industrial world-class production using the latest technology and materials. The circular economy transition will support hundreds of thousands of jobs and skills in every region of the UK and across a range of both existing and new sectors. In the government's resources and waste strategy, and also in the net zero strategy, we have set out a range of policy levers from product standards through to waste targets to help to drive that action. The government is also supporting further research and development through programmes such as the UKRI National Interdisciplinary Circular Economy Research Programme, which is identifying approaches and roadmaps for sectors ranging from textiles to construction materials. And we will continue to help businesses to overcome the many barriers that they face to develop new products and services that fit in with their higher circularity strategies. So delivering on our net zero and environmental targets will really depend on a shared vision and on the collective efforts of policymakers, of businesses, and of civil society at every level here in the UK. And we have much to learn from the circular economy initiatives across London and the rest of the UK. And it's so good to see cities, regions, and local authorities coming together at an event like this to connect, to collaborate around new solutions to tackle emissions, whilst also helping to drive innovation and growth. So it's fantastic to be here. I very much look forward to engaging with you in the future on what will become an extremely important industry here in the UK. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, and it's great to have a representative of the government here, which I think just identifies just how important what we're doing is to the UK's net zero ambitions. Okay, so I am going to move on to our key sponsor, and I would like to ask Sonia Brown, who is the UK Head of Government Engagement at Visa, to tell us about what they're doing. Visa are working really hard in the circular economy space, and it's part of their purpose to enable individuals, businesses, and economies to thrive. Their work on towns over the past few years has been fascinating in terms of looking at the benefits to citizens and communities of more sustainable ways of living. And Visa are currently running pilots looking at how we can help change shopping behaviours, encouraging people, for instance, to rent rather than buy, and are very focused on business models, including rental, repair, reuse, and others that we're familiar with. So I hope I haven't stolen your thunder, Sonia. I'd like to ask Sonia to come to the front and tell us a bit more. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Wayne. I know that if I ever need someone to stand in and to give my presentations for me, you will be very able to do it. So really appreciate that. And my second problem today is that I got a dress from Vinted that has nowhere that can attach my lapel mic from. So I thought I was doing really well, but have managed to epically fail in that front too. So hopefully, if I stay a little bit stranded behind the lectern, you can understand why that is the case. So I'm super excited to be here and to see so many of you in this room excited and full of passion for driving forward the circular economy. I'm really proud of Visa's role in supporting this initiative, and I'm very pleased this afternoon to be joined by a number of my colleagues, so Agatha, Tara and Elise, who will be so excited to talk to you in the margins about Visa and the work that we're doing, as well as Wayne, of course. And we're also really thankful for the partnership with ReLondon generally and, of course, today. I just guess that if I can leave you with 2 points to take home today, those would be, firstly, the importance of circularity as being critical for an inclusive way of economic growth and a sustainable future that actually benefits all. And secondly, that there is obviously work to do and that local change is really important as part of that. And ultimately, we'll only get there through collaboration. And that means collaboration between consumers, businesses, and government. So those would be my key themes that I would hope to make today. So, obviously, I don't need to explain to this audience the benefits that circularity brings to the planet and to the future. There's a huge economic opportunity, and economic growth is obviously critical to all of us. Currently, the estimate is that only 8.6% of the economy is circular, and that means that there is a huge opportunity. We have actually partnered with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and produced a report estimating that there was a €900 billion opportunity by 2030, which through increased sales and mass job creation. And if you think about it, that is just epic and amazing. And given the economic challenges that a number of economies face right now, tackling this and actually unleashing that opportunity needs to be a true priority for us all. So our research also found that 92% of consumers want to be more sustainable. And 16% of them were actually taking or acknowledged that they were taking active steps. And I think that that point is really important because some people may well be taking active steps, but not really know that they are taking active steps. So people engage in re-commerce activity, but only 1 in 5 were actually familiar with all aspects of it. So there's a lot of will out there, and the real question and challenge is how can industry and policy together accelerate the change? So our purpose is to uplift everyone everywhere by being the best way to pay and be paid, enabling individuals, businesses and economies to thrive. So in this particular area, we're doing two key things. The first one is really learning. We've got lots of behavioural insight labs. We're learning through experimentation and openly sharing outcomes. Our role as the world's largest payments network enables us to have lots of connections to top brands, to test and experiment, understand customer motivations, and really help to encourage circular behaviours. And the second aspect is in supporting. So re-commerce linked businesses by reducing payment flow friction. We all know that this is something that is a problem if it emerges. And so for everyone involved in every single one of those Res, we need to make sure that the way in which they're paying doesn't become a barrier and doesn't become a blocker to this effectively happening. And across Europe, we have digitally enabled 8 million small businesses, reducing paper and waste. And we're also working with governments in reducing the friction of loan disbursement for circular businesses. But today, I particularly wanted to talk about towns. So we've been doing an awful lot of work in collaboration with the Social Market Foundation and the British Retail Consortium. The genesis of this work was that we thought a lot about high streets, and we actually did some work jointly with the UK government around high streets. But what we found through that work was that actually it wasn't a good, people don't live in a high street generally, but they do live in a town. And so their connection is much more to the town in order to do that. And so what we wanted to do is to really think about how we could analyse towns and do more for them. So we did a piece of work called Let's Talk About Towns, because over 50% of us actually live in towns, and those are towns and areas outside of major cities. So this doesn't include people that might feel they live within a town in a city. These are people that are genuinely living in those areas outside of it. And we used Visa's data in collaboration with data available from public sources to look at areas such as economic vitality, people and skills, sustainability, infrastructure, and business environment. And from that, we created typologies of towns, so different types of towns that could come together and they could recognise each other through the common features that they had. And the idea of that was to really maximise the opportunity for cross-learning and cross-sharing across different types of town. If I am living in a town with great infrastructure links, it's no good comparing my solutions with somewhere that has got really poor infrastructure. Equally, if I've got a great business environment, what could I do to generate that if I live in an area with a poorer business environment? So business opportunity towns are those towns which face the greatest challenges. But in those towns, we often find that the people have the strongest engagement and will to effectively want to effectively change. So having done this piece of analysis, we then moved to celebrate towns, asking towns to tell us their success stories. And that was across all of those different areas that I mentioned, including sustainability. So we had some amazing stories coming through from towns all across the UK, and particularly talking about, for example, Banbridge in Northern Ireland, how they renewed their infrastructure for energy efficiency, improved EV charging, and increased the amount of park and ride that was happening within their local community. So lots to celebrate that's going on in towns up and down the country. And then the final part of our work has been to think about how we can together unlock the potential of towns. This has been working with over 40 experts from across the country, making specific suggestions as to how we can do that. In the area of sustainability and circularity, some key things came out of the conversation that I thought it'd be worth sharing today. The first was around eliminating change of use planning for permission for repair and reuse businesses. The second was on incentives to demonstrate waste reduction that prevents landfill, really looking at how we could promote circular economy adoption in our opportunity towns and integrate best practices into planning and policy delivery. But all of this does need a national coordination in order to actually unlock the potential and the opportunities. So in conclusion, we're delighted that the UK government has recently announced various different measures associated with towns, including £1 billion worth of new investment and town boards to provide leadership. But there is so much more that can be done in order to collaborate across all of these different people in order to actually make a difference. The Visa team will be staying here. They'd really welcome your feedback on this initiative. We're at a critical stage, and we look forward to hearing the conversation for the rest of this week and the next steps that we can play together. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonia. It's really important and great to see the financial services sector supporting circular businesses to avoid linear lock-in. So that's fantastic. Thank you once again for being our headline sponsor. And this does segue quite nicely into our next panel, which is about going into local delivery of circular economy and the experience of local citizens. So in order to introduce that, I'd like to welcome to the stage Cllr Rezina Chowdhury, who is the Vice Chair of London Council's Transport and Environment Committee. Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and welcome to Lambeth. I just thought I'd get that in. So as a Lambeth councillor, I feel I want to. I want to thank ReLondon as hosts for this, and thank you for inviting me to speak, and Visa also as a sponsor for this. I also want to thank Anne Pettifor, our keynote speaker, Shirley, Rodrigues, Lord Callanan, Sonia Brown, and the other panellists who've contributed so far. The circular economy offers London an opportunity to do the right thing for our residents and protect the planet. Everyone in this room knows that the city's service economy and imports mean that the environmental impact of London's consumption is felt far beyond its borders. As a global city, London has a key responsibility not only to bring emissions down to a sustainable level, but also to develop a model of sustainable living that other cities across the world can learn from. So London Council's climate programme includes One World Living as one of the 7 core themes led by the London Borough of Harrow. This programme aims to significantly reduce consumption emissions across London, focusing on 4 thematic areas: electricals, food, plastics and textiles. The goal is to achieve a significant reduction of around 2/3 in households' overall consumption emissions by 2030. So One World Living is about implementing new and better ways of living that enable the people of London to thrive, whilst at the same time significantly reducing their collective impact on the planet. We want to create a culture of sustainability and an enabling environment where Londoners are empowered to take practical actions around diet, product choices, food waste, repairs, and more. However, living a more sustainable lifestyle does not just benefit our climate, it contributes to wider policy agendas as well. In London, food costs are rising faster than in the rest of the UK. 12% of Londoners regularly or occasionally unable to buy food or essential items in 2022. Yet more than 1/3 of food produced is never eaten. This is costly for everyone in a supply chain, from food producers to retailers with too much unsold surplus stock and to households. If we can prevent food waste or redistribute food surplus, this will relieve significant pressure from households who are struggling with the cost of living. If we care for our electricals longer and make sure we reuse and share devices, This will not only help household budgets, but also contribute to bridging the digital divide. And by having more healthy and sustainable food options on menus, our diets and lifestyles will improve, reducing pressure on our health services. In doing this, the circular economy creates vital opportunities for economic growth, innovation and job creation that also addresses global challenges such as climate change and pollution. Systems change of this scale requires the active participation of all the constituent parts of that system: government, manufacturing and retailing businesses, and ordinary citizens. London local authorities have an important role to play in their own right as organisations who need to walk the talk and reduce their own consumption emissions. And local government needs to work with national government to fulfil our role to the best of our ability and make the circular economy work for everyone in the system. So just to give a few examples, I know I'm not Deirdre Costigan, who was meant to be here, so I'm going to give some Ealing examples. So Ealing is driving this transition, and I wanted to showcase a brand new Ealing project. Their plans for a circular economy hub in Acton. So they have exciting plans for a decommissioned household reuse and recycling centre, which has been vacant since 2021. They're working with Suez, London Community Kitchen and other local partners to use the site to support waste reduction, social value and decarbonisation in the borough. And they want it to be a place where you can go to borrow a lawnmower, to see whether your radio or speaker can be repaired, maybe get clothes altered or upcycled, and to support the redistribution of quality fresh food that would otherwise go to waste. But they're not alone. London local government is full of circular economy innovation. Heston in the Loop in Hounslow, a demonstrator circular economy neighbourhood introducing circular approaches that empower individuals and the community to waste less and reuse, repair and recycle more in schools, businesses and places of worship. The Eat Like a Londoner communications campaign, which is supported by 27 of London's 33 local authorities, which helps Londoners waste less food and eat a more plant-rich diet. Islington Council's grant scheme for local circular businesses, where they gave out £140,000 in grants to 23 local SMEs to trial or scale circular products and services across the borough. And Merton's The Wheel Project, a digital hub developed by Merton Climate Action Group, delivered by local charity Sustainable Merton and funded by the council, that links local circular initiatives and enterprises with residents and businesses. So it's really exciting to see so much activity across London, and that's why I'm really pleased to be chairing this panel of how we can make circular economy work for communities and residents. So thank you very much, and I'm going to invite the panellists for panel 2 on stage with me. Okay. Make sure our chair's off the stage. Thank you. Thought it'd be good to start off by getting quick introductions from each panel member. So would you like to start?
Hi, yes. Antony Buchan. I'm Head of Programme at ReLondon for our local authority support activity. So we work with the 33 London boroughs, and very pleased to hear some of your examples and know that we are involved in a number of those as well. So pass over to my colleague who will talk about one of them, I expect.
Hi everyone, I'm Victoria Lawson. I'm the Executive Director for Environment, Culture and Customer Services at the London Borough of Hounslow. And hopefully I'll get a chance today to talk to you about some fantastic work my team's been doing around an initiative called Heston in the Loop.
Hello, I'm Chris Barrett, and I am founder and director of thinkFOUND. thinkFOUND is a workshop in East London, Leighton. What we do, we produce furniture that's from reclaimed circular economy materials, but as well as our manufacturing, what we do, we also are a training hub, so we help make the circular economy accessible to young people in our periphery and our area.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Sophia Wyatt, one of the co-founders of Library of Things. Thank you so much for the love earlier. I barely have to say anything about what we do. I'm also a service designer, And so we designed Library of Things to be a kind of community-driven zip car for things. And now you can find your local item rental lockers around the cities. There's one in Brighton, I can see someone from Brighton over there, and power a movement across the UK that we kickstarted in 2014.
Hi everyone, my name is Richard Bradbury, Director of Environment and Sustainability for Camden, and we'll talk to you today about a lot of our community-based work around the circular economy and managing materials and the work that we've done linking up with Library of Things and also ReLondon over the past years.
To kick off with a question for Victoria and Richard. So why is the circular economy so important to you at a local level?
I'll start then, Richard. It made me surprised we both still had the mics in our hands. So for us in Hounslow, the circular economy is really important. You know, many of the arguments and statements have already been made today around the importance around the climate emergency, and obviously we declared one in Hounslow in 2019, but also the importance of reducing waste consumption, reusing, recycling, reducing waste is a really, really important part of how we achieve that ambition. But for me, I think what's really important around the circular economy is how it can influence trade, revenue generation, the creation of new ventures, jobs and skills. And something very profound in Hounslow through the pandemic was the shock to our economy and the importance of being able to diversify our economy so it could be more resilient in the future. So from my perspective, it's about the environment, it's about the financial, social, community and economic benefits that it can bring.
Stolen my points. I would say definitely that 2019 when we first announced our climate and biodiversity emergency in Camden, we held a citizens' assembly, and our citizens told us how important this was. There was a big focus on food. Big focus on mobilising the community and helping support how we can tackle our challenges, as I say, from a climate perspective. Then also ensuring that those local innovative solutions are tied in, I suppose, to our wider approach around. So we have a sort of a community strategy called We Make Camden. So focusing on sort of cost of living, focusing on public health, and those interventions as well linked in with a approach around circular economy illustrates how, you know, we as an organisation and a community that driving that. But I would also go back to the local economy as well. I'd sort of include our inclusive economy sort of strategy and ensuring that we can develop responsible employment and developing skills through repair and sharing and reuse is important in our approach too.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask a question specifically for Chris and Sophia about what made you start a circular business and how does it work?
Question. Well, yeah, so I think fundamentally it's about accessibility, you know. I'm dealing at the grassroots of waste, dealing with waste materials. How I got started was upcycling, that word, furniture, and that is all around us. And this is something you can do, which is the repair, reuse. It's something you can upskill yourself. So the reason I do what I do, so we make furniture out of reclaimed materials, was to take that forward and to turn it into manufacturing. So beyond the hobby and to kind of push it out to retail, what you're talking about, manufacturing. And why I've carried it forward is accessibility. So what I mean by that is young people who we deal with. We work with at-risk youth. We work with many other people with needs in the borough. This straddles, poor choice of word, straddle. This crosses over to employment and the lack of it. And what we're dealing now is a culture that we have a skills and labour shortage, and we also have a new green revolution that we need to get on board with and skill up the young people to be that future. So I hope that answers your question.
We're from the other side, so we're prevention of waste rather than cure. And we started Library of Things really because we needed it. We didn't have much money. We were all of a sudden finding ourselves needing to own or use pressure washers, sewing machines, drills, and we had, tiny flats that we didn't really want to buy and own this stuff in. So that was the first. We didn't think of it as the circular economy at the time. We just thought of it as a service that should exist. And so, now our goal really is how can we prevent as many unnecessary and, quite honestly, unwanted purchases from happening as possible. We all know in the room the stats of how much waste is created, but it's something also like 1.7 million tons of electrical items are bought every year. So if we can kind of divert some of that from happening and keep, as has been said before, more items in circulation, then that's great. And so that's what's happening in every community that we're in. Several tons of electrical items are reused every month, and that's just the start of it. And in each community, you can see how that quite quickly ramps up. But what I love about Library of Things and lots of circular economy ventures and projects is that that's like the hard data around the environment, and sort of tens of thousands of pounds are also saved in every community by renting rather than buying. But then there's all the softer side of things around skills and learning how to use these items, doing DIY projects, upcycling, the improved mental health that comes from that. The local pride and belonging that people have as a result of borrowing some of our items. There's some lovely stories that come out from everything from people renting a pressure washer to clean up a community space. It kind of is one of those things that if it's really easy to do, to rent, to borrow an item, it creates permission for more community projects to happen. It just makes it simple. There's no who has that. You don't need a Wayne on your high street with the ladder. So there's loads of amazing stories. Sorry, that was a niche joke from everyone in this audience. But that's what I love about Library of Things. It's kind of a multiplier effect. It starts with rental, but really it's got all these knock-on benefits.
Great. Anthony, I've realised that you haven't had a chance to contribute yet. So in terms of circular economy and ReLondon's work around it.
Specifically neighbourhoods?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think so many points have been touched upon, but they're sort of pulling it together. For us, why neighbourhoods are important from ReLondon is we're trying to help London transition to a low-carbon circular economy. London is made up of 9 million citizens. Trying to reach 9 million citizens is just a task beyond comprehension. But there was some work done by the GLA previously that shows that there's about 600 high streets across London, and that 90% of citizens live within a 10-minute walk of one of those high streets. Now, it's not necessarily high streets that's important here, just going back to the lady from Visa, but it's more about the community that creates. So that gives us this much more tangible number, much more tangible opportunity for delivering circularity, so 600 rather than 9 million. And then the reason we want to do it at a community level, and I was really pleased that the colleague from Kent earlier said that people are inherently lazy. And I'm pleased that he said that, because when I say it, Ali, our head of comms, looks at me in a way of, you can't say that in a public domain, but it's out there now, so I can say it. So people are inherently lazy, which means that for the circularity to be a success, it needs to be ubiquitous. It needs to be as easy as the linear economy, which means it needs to fit into people's daily lives. It needs to be there. The choices need to be there in the same way that they are to go and buy a ladder as they are to borrow a ladder. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that we've talked about it a lot, but we've not sort of talked about it in things, is that there's a real opportunity to intersect policy. So circular economy all too often gets pigeonholed into waste and recycling, just another word for it. But we've all talked here across all the panels we've talked to. You talked about it in your speech at the beginning, about the fact that it tackles inclusion, it tackles jobs and skills, it deals with the digital divide. So it's a huge opportunity to deliver that at a local level. And then the last thing that I want to just mention is that we know from all the circular innovators that we work with that they can sometimes be very geographically constrained because they're SMEs. By their very nature, they're quite small. But if you begin to join up these neighbourhoods, then you can create circular corridors, and that gives SMEs an opportunity to work across the city and not just be constrained to one small area. So there's a huge opportunity in London at a neighbourhood level to really drive a systemic change.
And I'll just want to echo what you were saying about making it easy for people. We know at local authority level, recycling, the easier you make it, more likely people are going to do it. So I wanted to ask about projects and interventions that are currently being delivered locally and the kind of impacts that you're seeing. So did you have an example that you wanted to share with us?
I can. So it's called Heston in the Loop. So Google it. So it's a circular economy neighbourhood demonstrator project. So it's the first one that we're running in Hounslow. It's in a part of our borough called Heston Village. And we're doing that in partnership with ReLondon. But actually, it's there to try to empower our residents, the community, schools and local businesses to really change their relationship with stuff. And so we've tried to introduce a range of new behavioural interventions that encourage the community to reuse more, repair, share and recycle. It's still in its very early stages, but I'll give you a flavour of some of the things that we've been doing. And a big shout out to my team that have been delivering this on the ground, and to ReLondon who've been working alongside us, because there's been a huge amount of community engagement to get this started. So it's really been focusing on a number of priority materials, so plastics and food, textiles, electronics, I think bikes as well, with a view that we can look at sort of 4 different sort of business models, so how people can use stuff more wisely, how they can use it again, how they can make things well, and how they can share. So some of these interventions are really simple. Some are digital and some are in person, but I think it's been a really interesting, I guess, experiment in a way to see what works in this particular community. And it's one of our most deprived wards in Hounslow as well. But we've done things like free food growing and composting. Talking about back to things like the challenges of the cost of living crisis. We've got repair cafes and workshops, eco-refill school shops, apps that are supporting a zero waste sharing economy, hard to recycle sort of collection points. But we've been doing that with 20 different organisations. We've engaged 3 schools. We've got 21 local businesses, a charity. We've even been able to employ locally, and it's still only very small numbers, but I think we've got about 2 local residents employed as ambassadors, and they've been really, really powerful. Antony and I were talking about it before the session, and we've got 10 volunteers. But for us, it's now, okay, if we can make that really successful, thinking about it being a very small geographical location, how can we scale that up? How can we move that right across our borough? And as Antony says, how do you make those connections so that it becomes really powerful and beneficial, not just to the community, but to the businesses trying to work in this space?
Richard, any examples from Camden that you want to share?
Yeah, thanks. I would say we do work across a range of, sort of materials, I suppose, around food, around clothes, around electricals, consumables. But the sort of voluntary and community sector are central to delivering that. So when we operationalised, I suppose, our climate action plan back in 2020, a community group got together called thinkFOUND, who basically just set up on Kentish Town High Street in a disused shop, invited anyone in to come through the door and just say, these are the challenges that Camden have set out here. How do we do them? And from that, they're still operating. They deliver sharing spaces across the borough, deliver community training on climate advocacy and local growing as well. We have Life After Hummus that do a whole load of work on around food and food distribution, local volunteering, using surplus food. The Fixing Factory on electricals, obviously Library of Things. We've got 2 Library of Things in Camden and councillors lining up to have more of those in our high streets. The refill station, which ReLondon funded for us, that's about driving plastics out of consumables and putting a station on in our markets where people congregate and buy and sell, so that they can refill rather than using virgin plastics. But I think where we found it really valuable, going back to a point that Victoria was making and Antony was making, is delivering these in a place and delivering these things amongst a whole host of other projects. So in Somerstown, we have a Future Neighbourhoods project funded by the GLA. We have a circularity market in there. We've got Life After Hummus on food. We've got a huge range of other sort of local circularity projects sat around retrofit for our local housing, greening our roads, increasing active travel. And so in terms of that community understanding, not just how it can be more, I suppose, operate more circularly in the way that they use materials, but also how they can help deliver and tackle climate action within Camden. So that sort of place-based approach is really important for us too.
Thank you. So we've heard in terms of projects from a local authority perspective. So just looking at you, Chris and Sophia, how do you collaborate with local government to achieve what you need to do?
So we have a good relationship with our council, which is Waltham Forest. We get involved in making parklets, so those are good. So greening projects. So what I was talking about before, we are, social procurement. We're the manufacturer, but we also wrap around training and teaching. So these can be commissions, and then our commissions from the council can be paid employment. So we're a CIC, so we go out and get funding to do taster sessions, work on soft skills, become employment ready. But the social procurement aspects around anything from construction, we work a lot with Section 106 as well. So in a way, we work through the councils on those. We have many areas where we wrap around. Fundamentally, we're grassroots linked into lots of other hubs, community groups where we can get young people, whereas they may not be able to get young people. We're quite attuned to them. We're quite respected in our organisation. It's very word of mouth. It's very lo-fi culture of people around you. So we have a real good relationship that we can feed into training courses and put on training courses, which we do. And we are beginning relationships with the council to do more of those because we have links to the construction and built environment industry as well. So over to you.
Yeah, working with local governments and local authorities, as the broader definition, is so key to Library of Things. Really because, roots us in place, and we think that a key way of creating intervention around changing behaviours is for it to be very place-based. Exactly what Antony was saying. I was like slapping my chair in agreement. So working with local authorities, it kind of aligns stakeholders around circularity, and they really have kind of channels that you just wouldn't otherwise have access to as a small business around marketing support. So, in Hackney, they have like digital boards that they could promote Library of Things around, or, the magazines that go in through the doors and things like this. And that's amazing because we go where there's local demand anyway. So the way a Library of Things works is that a community will come to us and say, we want one. And then we'll do a sort of demand heat map. So a bit like a Just Giving page where you'll go, I'm Antony, I'd love one in my local area. And we, gather all the people. And then we can work with that local authority and say, there's hundreds of people that want this. Let's find the right space and get the funding right to bring this to the community. And then what these items are is that they're community assets, they're community items, and there's that real, as I was sort of saying a little bit before, there's the permission for them to be to create communal good, and so that's why, yeah, it's so important to have that really good working relationship with local authorities, and we love being multiple in Camden already.
Can I just jump in there again? We also help out in terms of connecting various departments. We again, crossover with the youth violence, with mental health and well-being, that there's so many things going on. There's lots of good networking, events that are put on, but I think a lot of people are at the very much wave your hand status of this is what we do, this is who we are, we've got through a pandemic, we can offer this to you, we can link various departments within your council that may not know each other and what they do. We also do like events, there's big waste in events. So that's the thing that we do where we wrap around, we build the stage and things for a council event, and then we take it down and it's zero waste. Then because we're a manufacturing workshop, we can, and street parties, the 15-minute neighbourhood, all of those things that we link into, and then we, bring in the signposting services and everybody else along with us in that.
It's great. So those are just examples of how you bring people along with you. So I was just thinking from a local authority perspective, how do we engage more people? What are we doing to bring more people along on the journey with us, rather than the people who already evangelised about this, I suppose?
Did you want to answer? Oh, go on. Go on.
Well, I was just going to say that I think what was really interesting from Sophia and Chris is they barely talked about where most people put a circular economy, right? They talked about community cohesion, they talked about jobs, they talked about skills. They didn't talk about, we shouldn't talk about the circular economy to the general public. Well, I mean, I have enough difficulty understanding the huge complexity of the circular economy, and I work in the space. So talking about the circular economy to citizens is not what we should be doing. What we should be doing is talking about all the other benefits that it can bring to them, and they, these two people from SMEs articulated that so brilliantly, about access to products and services that wouldn't normally be available to them at a really affordable rate, access to jobs and skills which maybe they didn't have in advance, is a fantastic thing. That's how we engage the community in this. We don't engage them by telling them about the, existential climate crisis and how them borrowing a ladder is going to, Wayne's ladder is going to live in infamy, isn't it? How borrowing a ladder is going to save the climate crisis, but all of the other things are the bits that they really want to understand, and that kind of community cohesion is so important and so valuable, and it's such a great tool. Life After Hummus, which I'm engaged with. I think Heston in the Loop is brilliant because I'm heavily involved in it, so obviously. But I went round Life After Hummus. I was so sold. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant, and the people in there were speaking with such passion about it. It was infectious, and so that's how you get the rest of the community. And I just want to say one thing more, and I'll pass back to Victoria. Is you have to understand your community though. So you have to understand what it is in that community. So there are some fundamentals. Understand where your community is now, what makes it up, and understand where you want it to be. But don't assume that every community, every neighbourhood is homogenous. It's not, and they have different things that will drive different ways of creating that circular neighbourhood.
Yeah, so I would absolutely agree with all of that. I think when we were in Hounslow going through our green recovery, so coming out of the pandemic, our community said to us when we started to talk to them around climate and net zero, yeah, we don't really know what any of that means. That's great, thank you. But what we'd really like you to do is try to create a momentum that we can get behind, show us what's possible for us to do in our different neighbourhoods and our different communities. Repair workshops, we understand, library of things, we understand. And I think an important part of it from a local government perspective is the support of members, and we've got a really supportive cabinet, my lead members at the back, around Heston in the Loop, but more broadly on our climate ambition, and that helps you be really courageous, because some of this you need to be really courageous to take your communities on quite significant, sometimes, changes in behaviours and expectations, but some of it Heston in the loop, is so simple. It's just about how you galvanise it and put it all in one place that makes it really easy for people to access. And if they can access it, they will use it.
Could I just add one other thing? I think the first panel talked about storytelling. That came up quite a lot. And there's a community in Camden that I probably used to go to on an annual basis, talk to them about recycling, and they would shout at me for the terrible recycling services and the fact that there was so much waste on this street and all that type of thing. And I probably took the hit for about 6 or 7 years. And then I was walking around the area with them, and we were walking down the particular high street, and I said to them, well, if you want to work with us and perhaps in a more constructive manner, let's just look at all these things. And so there was the dry cleaners that did repairing, there was the shop that did refill. There were various things along this high street that actually, if you engaged in them, would mean that the things that were being put out in black bags wouldn't be out in black bags. And I had this conversation out in the high street with these fairly influential community leaders who then, you could see the sort of penny drop in. Okay, right. So if you understand, I'll talk technical, if you understand the system, then we can help as a community to unpick that, and suddenly the messaging changes. We work together rather than this adversarial relationship that I had with them about black bags on a high street in Camden. And now we've developed a much better relationship over the next 3 years, and every time we've got initiatives around sharing or repairing, they're one of the first in the queue to sort of step down and think, we want to be part of this. So part of it for me is definitely about the storytelling and being open and transparent about that.
Thank you. I just want to ask Chris and Sophia about, what would help you grow what you do in terms of like encouraging more people? I mean, the scalability of it, I suppose.
We were talking about this a bit together earlier, weren't we? Yeah, shall we? We were talking about space and accessible and affordable space, and really that's, maybe that's an annoying one to start with, but it's just the truth, that really that's the biggest barrier to anything that's place-based, that is circular, because you have, we have leaner business models, because what we're trying to do is quite disruptive to quite ingrained systems. So we're being more innovative, but that means it takes a bit longer for things to, like, around the business model to be kind of tweaked and gone right. So we're also naturally not extractive as a business model, so it's going to be slightly leaner. So we can't afford retail rates on a big space. It's just not feasible.
I think Roseanne was speaking about paper oil, well, paper rents flying up. We are manufacturing, we need a certain amount of space. And it costs a lot of money, where we have lots of value in other areas where we can save you money. We can save it in your services. We can help with employment and get people pumping money into the economy. So can we get social value leases? And just talk around models around the high street. We're also very adaptable what we do. We're very attuned, so we can change our model. We're also a training provider. We're also, the point of thinkFOUND is trying to be people's work experience. So we'd like to get people on the cargo bikes, that's the Saturday job, and things like that. We'd like to get, if there's an empty shop space, we could get in there and we could experiment recycle plastics. Someone was talking earlier about the waste of toys. We have a toy library in Waltham Forest, and it's the same thing as the charity shops. They have a surplus, but there's mechanisms now out there that are quite lo-fi and affordable, that you can have a pop-up shop and you can do some recycling plastics. It can be an educational thing, and then that propagates the innovators of the future. But the reality is, we've come out of pandemic, cost of living, it's London, big businesses here realising our little end of northeast London, and they're coming and the rents are just rising and rising. So we are begging in a way of just recognize what we do, and are there strings that you can pull? Are there assets that are underused? You know, we're also makers. We can retrofit these things, and we have links to the retrofit like industry. We can bring people on board because of our CIC status. We can turn old buildings into better buildings. You know, we can do that from what we are, and the network that we're creating. So if space is finite, well, help us create the space.
We embed into public spaces. That's one of the reasons why we love libraries. We love them as like community assets, as spaces where people can, one of the few places where you don't have to pay to be in anymore. So that's why we love libraries. But there are plenty of other kind of community spaces that we love to embed into and be a key. We call ourselves a bit of a Trojan horse. To your very point of, we don't really emphasize the environment too much, although you can see a kind of a impact dashboard when you log in as a member of Library of Things. But yeah, it's all about affordability, it's convenience, it's being as desirable as possible. So yes, being on high streets is a key part of that.
Okay, thank you. Have we got more time? Oh, we're out of time. Oh, we're out of time. Okay. Well, thank you very much for answering all those questions so well. I really appreciate your support, especially as I've just stepped in. So thank you very much for humouring me. So I'll hand over to Wayne now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury, and thank you for stepping in at short notice. I couldn't, if you hadn't mentioned it, I wouldn't have known. So there you go. Right, well, I mean, that was an amazing, if brief and whistle-stop tour of the circular economy. You'll have time to network and have a few nibbles, but just before that, I'm going to try and kind of sum up some of the things. So I'm
back one slide? No, you just shot us.
Yeah, no, I'm all right. I'm okay. I'm with it. Yeah. So, what did we learn today? We learned about the amazing power of SMEs and startups in the circular space. The innovation, if we could only do better at releasing that innovation through working with local communities, local authorities and citizens and other businesses and government, what an amazing change that would be, and what a contribution they are and can make to the circular economy and to the climate crisis without even knowing it. I think that's just magic and amazing. We learned from Anne that the problem is overproduction, which is kind of flipping it on its head, isn't it? There's so much stuff out there, but people aren't buying it. Because of inequality. We need to change the system, which is what we're all about. We're all about system change. We learnt about the role of neighbourhoods, the power of cities. And, you know, cities are where we have scale, we have ambition, we have the economic case. Our own ReLondon Jobs Report shows that the benefits could be well over 20 billion by 2030 of a transition to a circular economy. We have the social and physical infrastructure. I mean, I'll come on to this slide in a moment. I think just before I do, I want to just thank all of the people who presented today. I want to thank Ali and Georgie for the amazing work they've done in putting this together. And I want to thank Sustainable Ventures and Visa. Sustainable Ventures for hosting it and Visa for being our headline sponsor. There are 70 more events happening this week. And we've also gone truly global. We've got a series of 5 global spotlight webinars featuring cities from Latin America, India, Africa, and North America. We're hosting an SME networking event. We've got a great circular construction event. And we've got a couple of events from C40 cities also during the week. Look on the website, register on the C Week website if you haven't, and do get involved. I think the important thing for me is circular economy can really help with our net zero ambitions, the country's net zero ambitions, but it goes beyond that, doesn't it? These materials that we're dealing with are responsible for 45% of global carbon emissions. And a lot of those, that 45% figure, by the way, relates to hard to abate emissions that can really only be abated by systemic and behavioural change, like food, like cement, like steel production. So a circular economy provides us with better choices. It makes it easy for citizens to engage. It gives local authorities a plethora of tools with which to engage citizens in a relatively easy way. So think about what you can do. Think about what you can do at whatever level is appropriate for you, national government, city government, your town, your parish council, your neighbourhood, your community, or in my case, your road. If you'd like to collaborate with anybody you've heard from today, get in touch and we'll facilitate that introduction. Thanks again to everybody who's made this happen, including you. And please do stay for nibbles and networking. So with that, I think I'm going to draw the event to a close. Thank you very much for your patience.